this is alongside of someone who has just spent the past 4.5 months straight taking 6 classes and wanting to die. Hey guys, if you haven't been around for a while, yeah, I really haven't either. I've been keeping up with all the crazy stuff that's happening in our world. Like the fact that Luigi is suddenly a name that's trending. He is my favorite Mario character canonically, so don't have any complaints with that. Oh, also, I finished my stats class, which is like the hardest class I've taken in a while. I hate math so much, and I passed out with an A, so out of that class. Anyway, going on to relevant topics. I mean, this kind of is relevant to it, but today I want to talk about the topic of burnout. Many of us, if not all of us, have experienced burnout at one point or another in our day-to-day lives. Because we live in such a heavily work-focused environment where self-worth is directly tied to how much work one person can output, burnout is something that we see fairly often, and it's something that can have negative side effects. So today I want to spend our time discussing what burnout is, how burnout functions in this capitalist society, how burnout affects us in our day-to-day lives, and how we can take steps to create a society that's more inclusive of each other's mental health. So for context, I'm a senior in college as an undergrad student. I'm currently in the process of applying to master's degrees and PhDs and all that fun stuff at universities across the country. And last week was kind of like my tipping point. Because I started so late in the PhD application cycle, and I was also taking like 6 classes, and finals are this week. Last week rather, I was literally, like every single night a different a college had their deadline, and I was submitting those papers while also working on huge projects and getting up for work the next morning at 4 a.m. I think there were like a few nights where I only slept 3.5 hours, which is, I do not recommend it. I literally felt like a walking zombie the day after. So this experience really helped me, I guess, center my mental health in a way that I became more aware of how burnout can affect my patterns, my circadian rhythms, everything that I do in my life. And obviously there's a lot of psychological stuff that also ties into this. I'm diagnosed with OCD. I have a lot of obsessive thoughts, a lot of impulses. Thankfully, it's better now that I'm on medication and going to therapy. But what really sparked this whole like inward journey of discovering how burnout affected me and my relationship with work was when I was telling my therapist about everything, about my desire to have all these huge achievements, to do all these things. And she just asked me, she was like, why do you want to do all this? And like, it was a very open-ended, friendly question. I'm just like, yeah, that really just like prompted me to look more inwardly and to find all the underlying motives for why I might be so driven to do work. And obviously, a lot of it deals with the society we live in. We live in a society that's oriented around people's successes. People's failures aren't celebrated, only successes. You can only have successes if you live in the United States of America, or else you failed, pretty much. That's like at least a narrative that was presented to me growing up in elementary, middle, and throughout high school. And now I'm in college, I'm a comp sci major. Our job market is freaking awful. Like, if you just take a look at everything. So I'm just like, okay, yeah, no, a lot of this, for me at least, has manifested in trying to prove myself to other people, as I'm sure it can be also explained through other psychological lenses or whatnot. I'm not a psychologist. The most I've delved into is cognitive science, which I'll hopefully get to study more next semester. But tying all this back to burnout is officially defined by the 11th revision of the International Classification of Diseases, ICD-11, as an occupational phenomenon, not a medical condition. More specifically, burnout results from a negative relationship one has to their work, whether that be overwork, being exhausted, having all these negative emotions towards doing work, even if you might enjoy the work. At least with what the ICD identifies it as, it is specifically related to work. Obviously, other people have used more social definitions, being burned out from friendships, being burned out from relationships. These don't carry the same weight that this specific denotation of burnout carries. So when we're looking at burnout through the occupational or work relationship lens, we're able to envision the broader context in which work is situated. So in the context of our modern world, at least regarding to the United States of America, we live in a capitalist society where free trade is prioritized over everything else, specifically the accumulation of capital. Adam Smith, the godfather of capitalism, had this theory that as long as everybody was centered on their own self-interest, those would eventually bring about the collective self-interest of a society. Obviously, this implication has a lot of issues, as we're seeing unfold right now with healthcare specifically. But the specific thing I want to focus on in regards to capitalism is how these capitalist principles affect everyday working people. This is something that Karl Marx touched on in the Communist Manifesto, but basically, people just need to have a baseline income to survive, and capitalists take advantage of that. Oh my god. At any rate, the general idea of capitalism is to accumulate wealth to satisfy one's self-interest. In addition to the problems I've directly referenced, I also want to talk about how it affects burnout, specifically with workers, students, everybody who is a part of this system. The general attitude of capitalism is one that neglects things like mental health, spiritual experiences, the arts, humanities. This is why you see so many tech bros and so many finance bros who are against art schools, because they think it's a waste of time, when in reality, they're just so focused on accumulation of wealth, whatever that means to them. The artists, and inevitably, this places people who are naturally creative into a weird scenario. They can be creative so long as they produce something that will be well received by the general consumer and will generate them the income they need to sustain their own livelihood and to accumulate their self-interest. It's definitely a weird dynamic, but it's been common for the past few centuries throughout the Western world in general. Where this can start to lead to burnout, especially with the creative types, is when they feel that they're not outputting enough. They're not making enough for the masses to consume. Things like social media have only amplified this fear and this anxiety for artists. Additionally, the introduction of AI-generated art has added a completely new facet to this really complex relationship that at the end of the day just simply disadvantages artists. So when we're asking the question of why people are feeling so burnt out in this capitalist society, we can point out to the obvious things, like working long hours to make basic ends meet, or to pay rent. Or maybe it looks like staying extra in the office so you get that sweet extra vacation time. What's never really considered is how artists from all different walks of life, musicians, painters, writers, all these different things, are struggling to make their own livelihood while also competing with the overall financial system that has essentially set them up to fail if they don't manage to make something that appeals to X group of people. So then this turns into a tireless frenzy for artists to produce content that will sell just so they can make their own basic necessities met. And like I mentioned earlier, it can definitely intertwine with personality types and one's own lived experiences. I can't speak for others, but I do know, at least in my particular scenario, I'm always driven by this goal to complete something or to complete a set of tasks. And if I don't finish that set of tasks in a lot of time, or if I do it poorly, or if I fail, I'm a failure as a person. And something that I'm talking about in therapy is how I can fight these systems, obviously, and these ways of thinking, but also I'm trying to explore why I think the way that I think. And right now, this is probably the best working answer I got. Burnout, whether it be from creativity, from work, or from a mixture of the two, can lead to some pretty awful things. Today was my first day off in, I think, like weeks. And I spend the entire morning just doom scrolling and feeling unproductive as hell and feeling lazy and guilty, and now I'm making this video, so I actually feel fine. But I still have some papers left to finish to send to some colleges, and it's just like this general sense of, like, you feel awful. You feel like you haven't done anything with your life. This is part of the reason why I've stopped playing video games, just because I haven't been able to get through 5 minutes of a video game without turning it off and saying, I need to be doing something else. I have so many books to read. Wait, hold on. Like, literally my entire stack of books I still have to read. I literally got all these, like half a year to a year ago, and I still haven't touched any of them. I obviously have to read Crime and Punishment. I still haven't finished The Brothers Karamazov, though, so I should probably finish that first. How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi. I actually read part of it. I'll need to finish it, though. Light of Faith by St. Thomas Aquinas. Love this. I've read certain portions of this book, and you finish the whole thing in full. Be a Revolution. Saw it at a book sale, picked it up. Need to finish that. The Stranger by Albert Camus. Systems modeling theory and practice. So I want to design systems that can basically be used to help people navigate digital world. So hopefully this will be helpful in achieving that task. And finally, C.S. Lewis's Till We Have Faces. Love the Screwtape Letters, love Narnia, still need to read that. So that was just an example of this task-oriented thinking that I and so many other people present. This idea of always accomplishing things, always moving on to greater things, always doing something. And so just being, you're doing. It's like a rat race to the finish. But once you get to the finish, there's nothing there. Just another goal to run towards. And it's like, at some point, I'm just like sitting down and I'm like, I'm 21, and what am I doing with my life? Burnout's not fun. I strongly recommend people who are going through some kind of burnout crisis to just try and find something that they enjoy to do. I know that this is so incredibly hypocritical coming from me, but I've been trying to take small steps, like taking walks every day whenever I can, or playing violin, which I haven't done for the past few months, but I will definitely start again tonight. I think what I'm trying to get at is that there's a point in time where we need to be able to just find ourselves, to find who we are exactly, to let us not be defined by society, by the outputs we make and whatnot, but to just enjoy something for the sake of enjoying something. It's not a sin to do that. At least I don't think it is. Is it a sin to enjoy stuff? I'm going to leave everybody with one quote from one of my favorite authors, Kurt Vonnegut. Vonnegut, for those of you who don't know, Vonnegut wrote Slaughterhouse-Five, Cat's Cradle, amazing books, but I think that he was really, I don't know how to put it, he was just a very direct person, both in his writing and in speaking, and I appreciate his brutal honesty, and one of his best quotes had to do with the concept of burnout that I'm talking about today. Practice any art, music, singing, dancing, acting, drawing, painting, sculpting, poetry, fiction, essays, reportage, no matter how well or badly, not to get money or fame, but to experience becoming. To find out what's inside you, to make your soul grow. This is a constant process that is by no means done when this camera goes off, and it's something I'll be employing for the rest of my life, hopefully. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you again next time, where I'm going to be discussing albums, probably. I don't know. I need to sleep.